Thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. You know, influencers have been around for years and years, but they've exploded in importance over the last few because of channels like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, podcast channels, and many more. CMOs are increasing their budgeted spends, and marketers are using influencers in campaigns more and more. Travis Hawley is a vice president at Viral Nation, an influencer marketing and talent agency, and he's a subject matter expert on influencer marketing. And on this episode, we'll discuss strategies for how to best utilize influencers for a campaign, recruit them, as well as measure the results on a campaign's success. So let's tune in to Travis and an influential shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Great. Thank you, Travis, so much for being on A Shark's Perspective today. I'm very excited to talk about influencers and would like for you to at least tell us a little bit about your career and what got you to Viral Nation, as well as what really got you excited about working with influencers.
Well, thanks for having me, Shark. I really appreciate the opportunity. Anytime I can speak about influencer marketing, I certainly jump at the chance. My entrance into this industry is very non-traditional, I would say. But then again, influencer marketing is also kind of non-traditional, so it may not be too much of a surprise. The way I got into was very much by accident. I had just got out of the military. I was a Hebrew linguist, so I was actually working in
Well,
intelligence,
thank you for your
and
service, by the way.
appreciate that. And so my background is definitely in communications and analytics and things of that nature. But I was on my way to Afghanistan as a contractor for the Department of Defense, and I was just bored. And I was in Indiana at a military installation, and I was just starting to post memes. These funny pictures, these relatable pictures and videos on Facebook, and I decided, I'm gonna make my own page. I feel like I can curate humor pretty well, and I found it kind of fun, so I started doing that. I'm gonna kind of accelerate the description of this story because there's too many details, but I started making these meme pages, we call them. And at one point, a few years ago, I started one for jujitsu. So I train Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's a huge passion of mine, and I love it. And so I decided to make like a meme page, a fan page of all sorts of things related to Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And this is, around 2013 or something like that, I think. And Instagram had just started kind of getting a lot of traction, particularly since it released a video and really took a jab at Vine. And when that happened, I started catching some traction on Instagram and growing quite a following for my jujitsu page. My jujitsu page is called Jujitsu Saved My Life, and I got up to like 10,000 followers within a couple months or something. It was growing pretty quickly. To be fair, it was much easier to grow quickly back then because it was less competitive. But nonetheless, eventually, I actually had my first success when Ronda Rousey, who's a famous UFC and MMA fighter, a women's fighter, she actually shared one of the posts I had put up about her. So that kind of blew up my profile a little bit more as she brought a lot of traffic to my Instagram page, and that page started growing a lot. And then, I had a couple pages at the time, meme pages that were blowing up and getting a lot of attention. So I decided, along with a friend who worked in recruiting, that maybe I should look into a job in social media. To be honest with you, I never even thought that jobs in social media really existed because, I mean, I came from the military, I came from government. I didn't really think about the consumer side of business. I was always, thinking about defense and government and military and whatnot. So my friend convinced me to put together a resume, a very simple, short resume of my successes in social media, which were very limited. But long story short, I ended up getting a position at a mobile gaming company named Machine Zone, which is in Palo Alto, California. So the heart of Silicon Valley, which is where I'm from. I'm from San Jose, and I got that opportunity, with some luck, some timing, and some hard work and perseverance. I had a limited experience, so I may not have been the most qualified for that job, but I put together a really great presentation for them. They were looking to see, or they were looking for someone who could run celebrity social media for them because they were partnering with celebrities to, draft social media posts for their mobile games. And I just got lucky, man. I got kind of lucky. I got that job, which seemed to be a real entry level job for me, but it was a hyper growth startup, very successful, growing super quick, super successful, and I got to be part of that growth, and that led me to influencer marketing because my manager at that time, he was dabbling in it but didn't have the bandwidth to really manage it, so he handed it off to me and said, hey, we're doing these influencer campaigns, and I had no idea what influencer marketing was. They had barely even named it at that time. And Yeah, so I kind of fell into it, and that's somewhat of a long story short of how I got into influencer marketing, both kind of as an influencer, somewhat, growing my own pages, and then also on the brand side when I was running influencer campaigns at a mobile gaming company.
So it sounds like the exact same path everybody's had. Everybody starts as a Hebrew linguist, then goes thinks about going to Afghanistan, and then gets into social media.
Yeah,
Common
pretty.
story. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. And
Yeah.
it's an open invitation if Ronda Rousey would like to, like, even though she switched to the dark side and gone to pro wrestling,
Yeah.
hashtag fake press, wrestling. I would love
Hashtag way
for
more money.
hashtag a lot more money, a lot more money.
Yeah.
I would love for her to share anything. Talk us through what your definition, at least what your definition is personally, and that of your company. What is the definition of an influencer?
An influencer, simply put, in my definition, would be a person that has an audience, that has captivated an audience of any size on social media or on the internet or other digital means, that has the ability to affect change or action. So look, there's influencers who have 5,000 followers, who have 50 followers. They're normal people. We're all influencers in our own right. That's what word of mouth marketing really is. Between friends, between family and coworkers, we're all influencers. We just may not have a quantifiable audience like you do on social media, where say you have 500 followers or 5 million. So in the tradition, I mean, excuse me, in the marketing sense, though, typically we're thinking of influencers as people who may be subject matter experts of a particular topic, whether that's makeup or technology, or maybe they're just a model and they have an audience due to their beauty, or there are business influencers, who are thought leaders on, LinkedIn or Twitter. So there's so many different varieties. It's hard to bucket them. That's why I kind of have that simple definition of someone who has captivated an audience and can affect change on them through, particularly digital means by posting things on any social platform, or even it could be on a website, so even the media, even news broadcasters or journalists, they are also influencers. However, when we're talking about it in the marketing sense that my company Viral Nation deals with, we're mostly talking about the B2C influencers on social media, in particular YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
So, where do you see influencers in their place in marketing today? What value do they have to bring towards advertisers, of any flavor? How can they help advertisers, agencies, and all the people
Yes,
involved in building a brand?
sure. uh, One of the common like statements I like to make about influencer marketing in general is that increasingly it's less important what a brand says about itself, and increasingly more important what others say about that brand. So media went from radio to television, and now we're in a more digital era where brands had to broadcast one message, typically one message to the masses, and that's just the way they did it. It was just efficient and most cost effective at the time, and they could get away with it. But nowadays, there's no excuse to continue working like that as a brand. And it's increasingly more important to segment your audiences and give them their own tailored message to speak to them in unique ways. So one of the values influencers bring is the ability to do that, but not only new, like a message in a different format or in a different voice. It also personalizes a brand. So a brand is more of like an entity or an emotion. I think of brand as an emotion, but not as a person. And when a brand can partner with a person, that allows them to connect with their target consumers in a much more deeper way and more authentic way than the brand can alone. And as we know, like, quote unquote, us millennials, meaning myself and some of my peers, we we consume advertising differently, and we don't like typically the branded messages or the one message fits all kind of approach. So now, as influencer marketing has matured over the last 4 or 5 years, influencer marketing, in my opinion, is no longer like a shiny object or the icing on the cake. Now it's instrumental into all marketing efforts. It's a piece of that ecosystem. It's not one you think about, it's one you do no matter what. Depending on the scale and the budget, that's brand to brand. But it's not something they, meaning brands, can avoid anymore, because now it's vital. All of your competitors are doing it and you're not. You're in big trouble. If you're not personalizing your brand message and segmenting your audiences and hitting them in different ways and in different platforms and in different kind of approaches, creatively and strategically, you are going to lose in the long run. And that's kind of my long-winded answer on that.
It's all right. So where do you see brands winning today using influencers? Kind of give us a couple of examples of things you're seeing out in the marketplace.
So I would say travel, hospitality, mobile apps, these kind of sectors are doing really well with influencer marketing. They were quick to adopt them, particularly travel, food, and beverage. And I would say one of the reasons for that is because influencer marketing really truly blew up on Instagram. It's been happening on YouTube before Instagram, and it was happening on Vine before Instagram. But Instagram, as we know, has exploded to 1 billion monthly active users. So because of that, just deep penetration into the market, influencer marketing has really stood out there. And since Instagram is a very high quality in terms of image and video type platform, it's always been very suitable for travel pictures, whatever, food and beverage. It looks really compelling. Those types of imagery look really compelling. So those kinds of businesses are doing well with leveraging influencer marketing, and also mobile app companies are doing extremely well, and finding ways to, like I said, personalize and give personality to, some products that seem very impersonal at times. But yeah, I think a lot of brands are really doing well with influencer marketing. But to be fair, there's a lot that are doing terribly at it because they just don't know how to do it. It's not as simple as, hey, just throw up an ad. Hey, just find someone and give them a product, and then wham bam, we're done. So it's kind of an elaborate process to do it effectively and at scale. But I feel like the companies that are doing the best with influencer marketing are using it in a holistic way. And those are the ones who aren't letting their influencer campaigns uh, exist in a silo. And by that, I mean they're leveraging influencers for experiential, they're bringing them to events, they're leveraging influencers for digital activations, posting on their social media where it's highly trackable, highly measurable, highly attributable. They're using influencers to create content, licensing that content and marketing that content long term to give it, a very long lifespan. They're using influencer marketing as a piece of their their business objective as a whole, and it's supporting, customers, customer service, it's supporting marketing, it's supporting PR, it's supporting brand. They're using it in many different ways rather than as one silver bullet. And that's the way I try to advise companies to use influencer marketing is, and the reason for that is you need to get the best ROI possible.
So, talk about a little bit then where you see brands using influencers for lead generation, and we'll dive a little bit into ROI, not just lead generation, but what are the expectations other than just likes and shares and things that go on social? Are you seeing where people are using it to drive sales?
Yes. So that's actually one thing, not to plug my agency, but it's the truth of the matter is that we focus on it and is on those business objectives, meaning sales, downloads, purchases, leads, these kinds of lower funnel objectives, which can be very tough to do. And the main reason for that is I tell brand marketers and performance marketers, look, it's extremely unrealistic and tough to expect a consumer to convert the first time they see your product. However, it's possible and we can do it. And we strive to do it, but it's not very simple, and needs to be scalable. But the way I see ROI being measured the best is first tailoring and designing an influencer campaign around a specific objective. So whether that's upper funnel brand awareness, reach, impressions, video views, or mid funnel engagement and clicks and consideration, or lower funnel app installs, purchases, add to carts, conversions of any type. You have to design the campaign around that objective because there's a lot that goes into the strategy, platform selection, influencer selection, creative concept that will, affect that result. So it's important to establish that in the beginning, like how you're measuring success, and then designing the campaign around that success, and then measuring for that success and finding ways to measure it effectively. In terms of really driving sales, we also do that effectively. And like I said, it's tough to do in scale sometimes, because often the consumers are just seeing the product for the first time. So it's again unreasonable to expect them to convert the first time unless it's something free, like a free app. So obviously we do really well with those, and then those users are monetized later on by the brand. But to get someone to purchase something the first time is completely exponential in success rate you'll have, correlating with the price, right? The higher ticket price item it is, the harder it is to get them to convert the first time. So you need to build that rapport with them. And that's why I mentioned before the holistic strategy to do that. And that's moving consumers down the funnel effectively. So lead gen doesn't necessarily always have to be, hey, we got someone to click or add their information on a website or something. It could also mean nurturing those leads from brand awareness to consideration, engagement, and clicks all the way down to the purchase eventually. So you have to build that relationship with that audience through effective storytelling and value propositioning, right? So we can do that very effectively with influencer marketing too. But again, it will not be done necessarily or effectively, scalably, uh, only doing one campaign to a specific audience.
This is just we're this just taking off like lightning because of Instagram. So,
Mm.
where do you see the future of influencers?
Um, so a few points there. One is I think as it continues to mature, because look, we're really only a few years into this, and it really hasn't been widely adopted into the last seriously about a year or two, maximum, widespread, globally adopted. And even that is probably not exactly accurate because Europe, for instance, is several years behind North America when it comes to influencer marketing. Asia is pretty well developed and mature and influencer marketing, particularly China. But this is still very early stage, so there's going to be a lot of changing. And one of the things that affects that change is technology, and that affects our behaviors. That affects which social platforms are most popular. So those are some things that are really, really hard to predict. But the things I can predict is that the cream will rise to the top, as it always does. And as more and more influencers, rise on these different platforms, the true influencers are going to start standing out and pulling away from the crowd, while the scammers or the wannabes are going to start being weeded out, because we'll have the technology and the experience to understand who's truly influential and who's not. um, so with that, I would say authenticity will will increase in terms of importance, because as there reaches somewhat of a saturation point of influencer marketing, we'll be able to see right through who's just hawking products and who's truly interested in a product and really wanting to advocate for it, right? So that's going to increase. Another thing is, again, technology and our ability to measure campaigns and how effective they are and how they relate to ROI. How you do that will somewhat be brand to brand, because ROI is measured differently by a brand because they're looking for different objectives. But over time, we're going to be able to measure that more effectively, and so that'll change influencer marketing in many ways. Another way is, I think, goes back to the holistic strategy. Brands will become more intelligent how they engage with influencers, and by giving their campaigns and their efforts more life, by licensing the content and then using the content in their own owned channel, their own branded channels, where they can serve them on maybe on performance type of buys, cost per lead or cost per acquisition, cost per install. They'll be able to use that content in many other ways. So influencers won't just be a means of distribution, but they'll also become increasingly a means of content creation, which is often tough for many brands to do in authentic ways, because you know as an employee, it's hard to step out of the circle and think as a consumer when you're working at a company. So having influencers or other types of content creators do that for you is a real huge benefit. So the content creation part, I think, will increasingly be important as well.
So, if you were a brand or an agency representing a brand, at this point, what advice do you give people on how they approach finding an influencer and that outreach that goes with it?
Yeah. So my answer will, in full transparency, be a little biased, but only half biased, because I actually started on the brand side. So I can empathize with how brands feel and the influencer outreach kind of process. So you ultimately have three choices. One is to, you know, use a SaaS or software, quote unquote, solution that aggregates influencers, whether they've signed into that SaaS or not, and use that SaaS product to find influencers and potentially communicate with them through that. Or as a brand, you could do it all yourself and just cold outreach to influencers by trying to find their contact information or messaging them on a social platform. Or third, which, like I said, somewhat biased, is my own uh, solution I suggest, is that you work with an agency. And the reason for that, or one of the main reasons for that, is, look, you're going to be paying in terms of time and in terms of budget, no matter which solution you choose. So it's in your benefit to choose the one that leverages expertise and relationships. And that's the agency side. So working with influencers, these are people, oftentimes younger people as well. And it can be very difficult to manage personalities, to negotiate with them, to get in contact with them, to communicate back and forth with them, to do all the types of business, that you need to do with them. And as a brand, I promise you, you do not want to be involved with that process. In fact, I personally don't even want to be involved with that process. I'm actually on the brand side of the agency here, working more on the sales BD rather than the influencer side. The influencer side is very difficult to communicate with influencers and get things done sometimes. And trust me, as a brand, you want someone in the middle managing that for you, because it's going to take up way too much of your time. It's going to be quite a headache if you're doing that yourself. It's much easier for you to manage the agency and have them deal with all the issues, and then leverage their experience and leverage their relationship with those influencers.
Well, and another thing to add to that, a lot of influencers are not necessarily. I mean, they're trying to become professional influencers, but these are not like people that have this well-honed machine where if you need to make a change on the fly, there's a lot of cat herding, if you will, and that can bringing in that expertise, somebody else to chase down those updates to a blog or a social post or whatever.
Mhm.
That's a lot of legwork.
Yeah, I would even say it's herding cats with mice as well.
There you go.
So it's I'll be honest with you, I'm not exaggerating. It can be incredibly difficult and hard dealing with influencers, and trust me, you want someone doing that for you. I'm telling you myself, I do not even want to do it, but we have really talented talent managers who are great at this because they have the relationships with those influencers. And ultimately, just like dealing with the celebrity level or athlete level, that's why they have managers and things too. That's why that exists, because the relationship must be there to be effective. And having that relationship too allows us, this is something we do, is we actually help negotiate on the for the brand for getting more posts, for getting a lower cost per post. So we actually negotiate on behalf of the brand to get more. And we're able to do that because of the relationships we have with influencers and the experience we've had with them doing other successful campaigns. So again, I'll just say the SaaS solution, I do not believe is effective solution for a very relationship based industry, and that you want to leverage marketing experts and talent managers who do this day in, day out, and have them do their job, what they're paid for, rather than having to worry about it, the brand yourself. Manage the agency, call the shots with the agency, but have the agency do all the tough legwork. And ultimately, that's what we're paid to do. So let us do our job, and you will, in the end, be much happier. I promise you.
So, Travis, thank you very much for being on A Shark's Perspective today. If you would, please tell people where they can find out more about you and your company.
Well, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You can read more about Viral Nation at viralnation.com. That's viralnation.com. Or you can look me up on LinkedIn, Travis Hawley, Hawley. Connect with me, message me, and I'm happy to talk to you about influencer marketing or anything social.
Or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Ronda Rousey.
100%. That's the genesis of my career. So I love it.
I'm with you. Have a great day. Thanks, Travis.
Thanks so much, Shark.
So there was my conversation with Travis Hawley, the Vice President at Viral Nation. And let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from that conversation. First, it's less important what a brand says today about itself, and more important what others say about your brand. Utilizing influencers gives you added ability to capitalize on humanizing your brand, especially for products that are often considered impersonal, and then amplifying that message to an audience delivered by that influencer in their softer messaging. Second, brands are winning with influencers when they're using them in a holistic manner and don't let the campaigns live in a silo. It's optimal to use influencers with more than just a one-shot approach. Consider using them for a longer lifespan. Third, lead gen is possible with influencer marketing, and it is measurable. Plan out the ways to use it to move people down the funnel. Design your campaign around a specific objective and define what your KPIs are for conversions. And know that your measurement capabilities need to be tested. Last click is not a great measuring stick, especially for social. Got a question? Please feel free to find me on LinkedIn or send an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this show regarding another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. So go use your own influence and make some positive change in the world. Have an amazing day and join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.